Hi, I'm Shelby Williams with Plano City Council. This is my first council recap in a couple of meetings. I have been remiss in doing these, partially because of summer vacation, and when I would get home from council meetings, kids were still awake. Now, the little one at least is asleep in bed and not jumping up and down on my lap and wanting story time. So that gives me a better chance to do my council video recaps. But don't worry, story time will come tomorrow. So at tonight's meeting was a relatively short meeting. During preliminary open, we had an update from Fire Chief Biggerstaff on the Plano Fire Training Center, which is nearing completion. There will be an open house on Saturday, October 1st, which I'm looking forward to. So the Fire Training Center, we approved and started construction, obviously. That's why it's nearing completion. This is to give our Plano Fire Rescue folks a chance to train here in Plano. And the training facility is being built out. It's a state-of-the-art facility to train in every circumstance that they might encounter. And as was put by former Chief Greif and Chief Biggerstaff related tonight, the idea is not to train until you get it right, it's to train until you can't get it wrong, which sentiment I wholeheartedly concur with. So there are a few elements. There's a 6-story tower on the training facility to simulate a high-rise, and every floor is different. There's a condo, there's an office building to simulate training in a variety of environments. There's a multifamily structure, 2-story dwelling. There's a single-family 2-story dwelling. There's an urban search and rescue, USAR, which can simulate structural collapse. So there are these large barriers that you can maneuver in a variety of fashions to simulate different structural collapses. And how do you maneuver around those? How do you get through them? So it's a fantastic training facility. Should be coming online soon. Again, the open house, if I recall correctly, is Saturday, October 1st. And then Chief Biggerstaff moved into a presentation on STEMI. That's ST elevation myocardial infarction, or a heart attack. Yeah, why they can't just put it in layman's terms to begin with, I don't know. But STEMI is how Plano Fire Rescue responds to heart attack cases. And Chief Biggerstaff related 2 real scenarios with us and the associated response times. So in the first scenario, an hour passed from the onset of symptoms and the time the person actually called 911 for help. An hour going by. So I don't know what their symptoms were like or what the situation was, but that was a huge passage of time. The next, and by the way, from dispatch to getting that person to the hospital and receiving treatment from the doctors was 40 minutes, which was a record at the time, or at least very, very good. And then 2 days later, if I recall correctly, another case came in where that record of 40 minutes was dropped to 30 minutes. In this case, the person had experienced symptoms for a minute or two before calling 911. So big difference between an hour and a minute or two. But it was a good thing because, including the response of getting Plano Fire Rescue on site and getting the patient to the hospital ready to receive care, because the moment they got into the doctor's care in the hospital, he coded, and they had to shock him and resuscitated him. So literally not a moment to spare in that entire scenario. So very well done, Plano Fire Rescue. And this is another good reason why we need to train until we can't get it wrong. We moved into our regular meeting with a proclamation. The Plano Symphony Orchestra will celebrate its 40th anniversary on Thursday, September 22nd. So congratulations to Plano Symphony Orchestra. And we also issued a proclamation that September 2022 is to be Hunger Action Month in the city of Plano. Speaking of Hunger Action Month, we have done, since Mayor LaRosiere was mayor, we have done the peanut butter drive every fall to help fight hunger. And we've done that in partnership with the North Texas Food Bank and actually numerous local organizations. And we've grown our goal and how much peanut butter we've collected every year since its inception. This year we are setting the lofty goal of 500,000 pounds of peanut butter. That's 500,000 pounds. Now, it's not just peanut butter jars that you can donate. If it's the same this year as it has been in years past, if you do a fundraiser through the North Texas Food Bank, $1 will equate to a pound of peanut butter. So that's 500,000 pounds of peanut butter, or $500,000, or any combination thereof. But let's not just raise 500,000 pounds or $500,000. Let's blow that out of the peanut butter jar, so to speak. So during comments of public interest, there were several speakers on short-term rentals again. Now, they speak every meeting. They have for a couple of months now on short-term rentals, and the issue that somebody highlighted this evening is that short-term rentals in Plano are expected to double in number in just the next year. Now, currently there are 680, I think, 691 some odd short-term rentals. That's an approximate number within Plano, and so they're expecting that number to double. So here's the reality. Until recent history, the past maybe decade, short-term rentals in a place like Plano weren't a thing. They've existed for decades in prominent tourist destinations, beach destinations, ski destinations, etc., but not in a place like Plano. We are not a prominent tourist destination. And so until the proliferation of Airbnb and VRBO, etc., there just hasn't really been a market for short-term rentals here. However, now with the proliferation of those platforms, there is. Some people want a short-term rental because they're visiting their parents for a week and they want an actual house because they've got 4 kids. That's fine. Some people want a short-term rental explicitly to hold a great big party. That's not so fine. But the problem is there's no real governance over which is which. And what we have heard consistently is the people who come to speak who have experienced this themselves, a short-term rental crops up next door, and it becomes a real problem. The neighborhood, or at least their home, their reporting becomes unlivable. And even if 9 times out of 10, it is a family who just wants a home for an actual single-family home for a few days, the 10th time it's not. And when is it actually going to be the 10th time? If it's just 1 in 10, is it going to be 2 in a row? Is it going to change to 2 in 10? And the element of uncertainty and the disruption when they do cause problems is something that we've heard about consistently. In addition, we've heard consistently about the erosion of the fabric of a neighborhood and the community in a neighborhood when an increasing number of people don't have any roots or stake in the neighborhood. So I understand all of this. We then moved into a couple of consent agenda items that were pulled regarding receiving grants from the state, the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, TDHCA, for sort of short. These are 2 specific grants for our rapid rehousing program. This is to address immediate homelessness. Now, the first grant was $138,000 and change. The second grant was $44,000 and change. The second grant was specifically for the youth set aside. That's for youth who are youth head of household or youth homeless. And Councilman Grady had a number of good questions about these programs. And this is explicitly to assist with immediate homelessness and in some cases homelessness prevention. Now, I've said on multiple occasions that I think homelessness prevention is a better use of resources than homeless assistance, because under the idea that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But of course, for the people who are homeless and do want help, a lot don't want a shelter. They won't even seek emergency shelter when the weather turns really severe. But for the people who do want help, The community needs to be able to offer something, such as emergency assistance. But the real trick is in preventing homelessness to begin with, and then long-term rehabilitation once somebody actually is homeless, and making sure that the reasons for the homelessness are addressed, the core reasons, and that they are able to self-sustain. We then had the second of 3 public hearings on the new budget and the tax rate. Now, council did agree at the budget work session to adopt the no new revenue rate again for the 4th year in a row. So what the no new revenue rate means is on all properties in the city that were taxed last year and taxed this year, we are not raising actual taxes. Now, never mind the rate. The rate is just a multiplier. We're not raising the actual tax burden. However, there's a caveat to that. This is an aggregate calculation across all properties in the city. So if your property value goes up greater than the average, and like all property values went up an astronomical amount this year, but if, let's say the average was 20%, just to work with round numbers, if your property value went up 30%, you are still going to see a bit of a tax increase because you're higher than average, and this is an aggregate calculation. It's not on each individual property owner. Conversely, if your property value went up less than average, if it only went up 15% and the average was 20%, you're actually going to get a tax cut. There's another caveat to this. This is all based on, primarily, I should say, homesteaded single-family residences. So if you own your property and it is your homestead, and condos would count here as well because it's ownership, not rental. And if you've got the homestead exemption, then you are afforded a number of protections against tax increases. The most significant of which this year is that the taxable value on your property cannot go up, cannot increase more than 10%. That's not the market value, that's the taxable value. So if the taxable value of your property last year was $300,000 and this year your home is worth $500,000, a ginormous jump, your taxable value still cannot be more than $330,000. That's your starting $300,000 plus the max of 10%. However, as a consequence of all the multifamily and the short-term rentals that we've brought online in Plano in the past decade, 41% of all of our housing is now rental. People who rent get none of those protections under state law. If your apartment or your rental house increased in value by 50%, then your general tax increase is going to be commensurate. We're reducing the actual tax rate sufficient to offset the increase in property values. But again, see the first caveat about how your increase compares to the average. The average increase is based not just on the market value jump, but the taxable value jump. And there are a lot of properties which have those homestead exemptions and are going to hit that 10% cap. If you rent, yours will not. So this is going to hit landlords and renters alike because the landlords are on the hook to pay the taxes. You as the renters are on the hook to pay those taxes through your rent. So there's a misconception that renters don't pay taxes. You pay every bit of those taxes. Landlords do not pay your taxes for you out of the kindness of their hearts. It's a hard expense. It's a firm expense that they have to pay, and so it's baked into your rent. So this makes rental housing even less affordable than it already was, which is just a double whammy on in this inflationary environment. And the landlords are stuck with the position of having to pay the tax bill and potentially having renters who can't afford to pay that tax bill on top of this inflation. So it's hurting everybody. So understand those two important caveats. And that said, also, this pertains only to the City of Plano portion of your property tax bill. In Collin County, where most of Plano is, where there's a sliver in Denton County, but in Collin County, you've got 4 taxing entities. In Plano, in Collin County, I should say. You've got the City of Plano, you've got the Plano ISD, the County of Collin, and the Collin College District. Now, the City of Plano makes up 19% of your total property tax bill. The County of Collin makes up approximately 8%. Collin College, I think it's around 2.5% to 3%. And then Plano ISD takes the lion's share. Pardon me. And now get this. Plano ISD is a Robin Hood victim. So the Robin Hood school finance scheme across Texas, literally, this is where the term Robin Hood comes from, takes money from property-rich districts and gives it to property-poor districts. Well, this has put Plano ISD upside down for a very long time because Plano ISD is considered a property-rich school district. So in your property tax bill, 66% of which, roughly, is Plano ISD. Actually, probably more than that this year. More than $213 million of what they're going to be taking in property taxes is going to be taken directly out of Plano ISD by Robin Hood and redistributed to other school districts around the state. Now, to put it in perspective, that's about the entire amount that the City of Plano is collecting in property taxes. So everything I just told you about the no new revenue rate and how much we're going to collect in city taxes, 19% of your total tax bill, which means 19% roughly of your, call it 20% of your property tax bill, that is taken not necessarily for Plano ISD, but it's taken by Robin Hood and it's given to other school districts. 20% of your property tax bill. If your property tax bill is $10,000, as it's likely to be with the current average single-family home value in Plano, $2,000 of your dollars are being taken directly from your property taxes and given to places like La Jolla ISD, which built a water park, like a Hurricane Harbor style water park, except a much smaller one, in their water district, they're a Robin Hood beneficiary. So that money is used to build a water park like that. And get this, they can't even afford to operate the water park, so they want more money just to keep it open. So needless to say, I am all in favor of getting rid of the Robin Hood scheme. However, that's a very long, complicated, semi-complicated explanation of the current proposed tax and budget. We are looking at a $676 million total budget. Now, this is everything. This is expenditures for CIP, that's Community Investment Plan, through bonds, that's sales taxes, that's fees, that's everything. So when I say the $220 million budget of the city's portion of property taxes is about the same as what Plano ISD is going to lose to Robin Hood, that's not to say that the city's budget is $220 million. That's just what we anticipate collecting in property taxes. So lastly, we discuss, I should say, the actual final vote on this year's tax rate and budget is going to be at the September 12th meeting. There will be the third and final public hearing at that meeting, and their council will take the final vote. The final item tonight was a change to the heritage tax exemption process. So real quick overview, the heritage tax exemption is specifically for heritage properties. You got to meet certain qualifications. You can apply for a property tax exemption. The exemption is meant to offset the cost of repairs that come with having a much older home. So if you have something 50 years old, I can't remember what the actual threshold is for age, but for instance, a 50-year-old home requires a lot more upkeep. And in order to, so the tax exemption is meant to offset that cost so we can preserve our heritage properties, but it also comes with those strings. If we're going to give you the tax exemption, then you have to upkeep that property. And we inspect it. We say, okay, you got to fix this, that, and the other in order to be eligible for the tax exemption this year. So part of the big revision to the process was about providing more flexibility regarding the dates involved, because to provide the tax exemption, there's a firm date by which those exemptions have to be granted before property tax time. So for 3 years, I think, appeals, when somebody had been denied, appeals had gone straight to council. Now appeals are going to go back to the Heritage Commission itself, which is where appeals used to be handled, but program participants can still informally appeal to council. And we saw tonight that when the Heritage Commission makes their report, council, we will receive in our council meeting packet information about the appeals and the denials. So we'll have the information on the denials, and any applicant who has been denied by the Heritage Commission on the appeal by the Heritage Commission can still come speak to council in the meeting that we will be approving the tax exemptions, and they will be notified that they can do so, and we will have the information in our packet. So it's an informal process at that point, but it was important to me that we still have a process and a means by which they can appeal directly to council. That's it. Despite being a short meeting, that took longer than I thought to recap, but maybe I was just making up for lost time with the past couple of meetings. So I'm Shelby Williams for Plano City Council. Thank you, and God bless.